This afternoon is going to be focused on project design. And it's going to be not just by a focus on any kind of like project management tool, things like that. We are just going to focus on being open by design, as I mentioned in the previous session. And hopefully with some of the tools that I'm sharing today, which is how to do an open canvas and how to do road mapping for project, this will help you to adopt openness in your own projects because you are already thinking about it. So we will start with open canvas first, and then we'll go with a bit of road mapping. I think I mentioned before, so it would be very useful if you could have, just to give a bit context to the exercise, if you have a project in mind when doing these exercises. It doesn't have to be your work project. It can perfectly be your garden project, anything that you're working on the side, but just like have it in mind when thinking about this, so you can have a bit of continuation and use all of the tools in the same project, so you can see that. It can be your fellowship project, if you're working on it and you haven't started road mapping with your mentor, things like that. So I'm just going to start with something that seems very easy, but usually people quite struggle. And it is the vision statement of your project. So what is a vision statement? A vision statement is an inspirational, high level, very important, and very concise. So like a sentence, 2 sentences max. Declaration of your organization, in this case, you are your own organization, so your own project, long-term goals, and future impact. So I would like for all of you to take 2 minutes. I'm going to be very strict. 2-3 minutes to think about what would be the vision statement for your project. And again, when I'm saying project, it can be whatever you want in your mind. What we are going to do next is use the open canvas to think through the open project strategy. So we are going to use that vision statement, and we're going to go from a high level to a more low level way to think about your project. And again, this is the idea that you will do it by design. So we will check some examples. And ideally, you will use it, as I said, from your own project. This is a 1-page project plan. We are going just to start today on this. So again, maybe you have already put the time and the thinking into this, but hopefully if you haven't, this will be something that will help you to develop your own project, either your SSI fellowship project or whatever other project. People usually tend to underestimate, first of all, how long does take to create an open canvas or a roadmap, and also how useful it is. So I would encourage you to really, put the intention basically on it. And why? Because as I've mentioned before, this is the slide that you've seen before. The aim is that we designed and build our projects in a way that they empower others to collaborate within inclusive communities. This is not a new framework that we created. So OLS was created within the Open Leadership Framework from Mozilla. This is the table that came from that program. So this is a program that doesn't run anymore, but basically that was the aim was to establish a set of open leadership principles, practices, and skills that people can use for, as I said, personal or professional development as part of an open community or project. So as I said, like today, if you don't feel like, thinking about something technical, you can think about how you're going to redo your garden for the summer. That's totally fine. I just think like this thinking intentionally, it is very useful when setting up a project. And then I should say like this is an evolving process. So that you've set a roadmap doesn't mean that, 1 month in, 1 year into your project, you go back to that roadmap and say like, this timeline wasn't correct. I need to redirect, or this task that I put here is not really a priority. Why am I focusing on this? So let's think about it also flexibly. So this is the Open Leadership Framework. And today we are going to focus in the design part. So as you can see, it mentions all the keywords that were mentioned in the slide before. So designing and building and empowering. So these are basically the three elements on this column. Today we are going to focus on the design. We are going to design for understanding. So you can think about how to focus the content on of your project or your community. We are going to design for sharing. So again, information sharing focus, coming back about that open sharing, open knowledge that we thought that we talked about in the open research session before, the community interactions, and again, design for participation and inclusion. So we'll try to get some governance focus, the project identity, things like that. That said, I remind you that we will have future sessions on tooling for collaboration. That is next week. That we will focus a lot on the community part of the design because that's mostly the collaboration aim. And also there will be the research community management sessions that will touch on these building and empowering features of the open leadership framework as well. So that's why we are going to today focus on the open canvas. What is the open canvas? This is literally it. What you have in the screen. It is just a table. It was adapted from the Lean Canvas. If you've done any project management course, you might be familiar with that. And it basically divides a bit the focus between the product that you aim to develop. Product can be a tool, a community, a blog, the project in general, are the community that you want to touch. And we have a lot of the thinking part, planning part in the upper side, in the upper part. And then we have the project execution focus on the lower part. So I'm just going to go through it all, so then we can try to develop our own open canvas. So this would be like an example of it. You start with a problem and then go through your solution, taking metrics, all of these bits. Let me just, no, where I go? Yes, so I'm just going to walk through the open canvas. There we go. Sorry. So with the product, we are going to plan how you'll build the community and the product itself. So like, we don't want to focus just on the product. We don't want to just focus you to focus on the tool, on what you want to achieve. You need to also focus on the community. It is as important as how you're going to build the product. Because in the end, you might find that you've built the most beautiful product in the world, and then nobody is willing to use it. Or it is not accessible, or nobody's going to contribute to it. So again, coming to open by design, these are things that you have to think about prior to starting your work. So first of all, in the problem, I want you to think about the top 1 to 3 problems that you want to solve. Again, you can go from high level to just define like 2-3 problems general, depending on the project that we're talking about, or you can have just like one problem. Then the proposed solution for each problem, if you've mentioned several projects. And then very important box and very important thinking is, how are you going to ensure that your solution is valid? How are you going to measure your success? This is often one of the most difficult questions to ask. And again, we are going to try to do today in 10 minutes or 15 minutes what usually takes hours. So I would encourage you to start with the problem solution and then just go one by one, okay? We don't want to have a finished product as in open canvas today. I just want to give you a bit of the base so then you can hopefully find it useful and work it on your own. So then, once you have a solution, how are you going to measure success? How are you going to do it? What do you need to build a minimal viable product, MVP? What do you need in terms of the design, the development? Do you need people to help you? Do you need tools and hardware? Do you need money to get materials to support your own time? So what do you need? think about all the resources, even if you have them already, the available or the unavailable, all of it. Then we will go through community. It is quite useful because you've already been thinking about the resources required. Then this is quite an easy transition. So like you've thought, oh, I'll need this type of engineer or this type of person or a community manager or an event organizer. So then you normally feed directly into your contributor profiles. So you can basically list what are the contribution types, the ideal contributors, and what does this look like. And this basically is what the resources require and the contributor profiles is what is the basics of your project execution. So your contributor profiles should fulfill the needs required to build your product. If it doesn't, then you're missing some profiles. Does this make sense? So again, then we go into your users. And this is sometimes something that we don't think enough about. So what is the target audience for your product? And who's going to be the early adopters? Because those are usually the ones that you want to listen to. Who are you building this for? And who will your early adopters be? So with this, you have your early adopters, your contributors. How are you going to gain new people? How are you going to reach farther? So this would be into the contributor channels. This could be as simple as creating a Slack channels or a newsletter, LinkedIn. Some years ago, I would have said Twitter, but maybe Mastodon now. You get the gist of it. And then again, this is similar to user channels. So the contributors channels would be also great, for example, like GitHub, if it is a community or code-based project. So like people can actually make those contributors. The channels is like, how are you going to get them and how people will get used to that. And in here, once you fill these two boxes, basically you have the basics of your community engagement strategy. Because contributors are usually a subset of users. So there will be some overlap, but then you have other users that don't contribute but still want to benefit from your project. And then again, this will, so coming back to your question, Salma, so sometimes to me, actually, the mission statement or the vision statement even, like it's really overlapping to the unique value proposition. Because in the end, what you want to say is like, what is it that you want to build? What is it that you offer? And why is it different? Why is it worth it that people contribute to your project? So one thing that is key to think about in here is that if what you're offering has already other options there, even if they are not totally the same, but you have already other options, it's good to identify them because it might be worth it for you to reconsider, do I have to create something new or something different? Or can I just collaborate or build from what it's been built before? So again, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes, even if we want to build something new, we can start from something that has been built before. So this is an example, for example, that was built in one of our workshops. So this person recognized the problem that was the lack of recognition of certain contribution types on academic papers. And that papers weren't really taking advantage of the web as a medium. So the solution that this person proposed was awarding badges to authors on academic papers based on their contributions. The metrics for success were going to be, the number of publishers using badges, and also the number of badges awarded. How were they going to do it? What did they require? On hardware, Heroku One process, I don't even know what that is. Development, design, and then of course publisher and ORCID buy-in, so like that you can actually see these badges in the ORCID platform. So in this contributor platform that I mentioned before. Going to the community, so this person recognized that they could have different contributors, so developers from publishers at ORCID, but also like any researcher who can code and want the budgets. Users profiles, it will be mostly publishers who want to use this budgeting system to enhance the paper reading experience, but also the researchers and the ORCID platform. For contributor channels, so the employer, and the users who want back, yes, and the users who want new features, and the user channels, so creating a community, as I said before, it can be blog. You can see that this was quite an old example, so we were still talking about Twitter and talks in general. The unique value proposition of this project was that, so again, the impact, issuing budgets to credit authors on academic papers. This could perfectly be the vision statement. What was different, that the budgets for authors are not really a thing on academic papers, and that you can get the author roles on your papers that otherwise you wouldn't get. So you get a bit the gist of it. So now what I want you to do is work on your own open canvas. Okay, so we are going to continue on, again, a very, I hope, useful exercise. It is a bit similar, a bit different. And it is road mapping. So again, there's a focus on open projects, and we will be focusing on just some of the tasks because, again, this is not something that you do in 10 minutes. But what are we going to do? We are going to just try to see how can we use a roadmap to plan for work and the contributions for your open projects. Look at some examples. So yeah, and hopefully we'll start creating or reviewing your roadmaps if you maybe have already done some. So this is, again, going back to the framework. So we always back to open leadership framework, and we want to design and we want to empower others to collaborate. So this roadmap focuses in this. Focuses on the participation and inclusion bit on your design. So you'll need to think about a bit about governance, the community, and the project identity. I will invite you today about thinking more project-based. So just because, as I said, we will have more sessions on the community and the contributors next week. If you want to focus on that today, that's totally fine, but you will have definitely more learnings and insights in the future for that. So the roadmap basically what wants to encourage you is to create welcoming spaces. That's, I think, what we are all here for. We like to contribute, we like to collaborate, and that's why we are SSI fellows. And how do we create a welcoming space? We create the welcoming spaces usually make a good first impression. So when you come to them, you know that you are in the right place. You don't feel, dismissed or left apart. Welcoming spaces explain how you can get involved in different ways. There's usually not one size fits it all. And welcoming spaces let you know what is happening now and what will be happening next. So that requires a level of planning and road mapping that is usually quite a hard work, and that when you start new projects, people tend to forget about. So that's why we always include this when people are working about their projects in our open science training. So what goes in a roadmap? We again try to be as concise as possible, and that is one of the difficult parts, in my opinion. It's very easy to explain things in an hour. It is very difficult to explain them in 10 minutes, and it is almost impossible to explain them in 1 minute. In a roadmap, we usually have a project summary and a welcome. We have a how to get involved, and there's a timeline. This is just the simplest roadmap in the world, yes? And it is not the unique. There are versions. You can do, again, what works for you. The idea is that you find this useful. So in the project summary and welcome, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. We want to welcome our orient visitors to the project. Make it clear and important. It is very important that we make it clear to help them understand where they are and why they are there. So often they have been linked directly to the roadmap. And we want to have a project summary first. So again, a clear focus. This can be your vision statement with a couple of add-ons, something very concise, because people will land on your page, on your summary, and they will have like 1 minute span attention. Whoops, sorry. Then the how to get involved. So the new contributors usually are super excited to get into a new project that they found out, and they want to jump right in. How do you want to do that? So you want to point to parts of the projects that they can immediately work on. Again, you have to be aware of the learning curve, if there's any, the knowledge base, backgrounds, things like that. And also point to documentation they should check out if there is something else that you want them to do. And also, there's no roadmap without a timeline. Everything has to have a timeline, even if you move things around. But like this is what keeps it tidy up. Yeah, it's the start of the roadmap, as you can see. So you will have some tasks in the roadmap, but the task will always work around milestones. And the way that a task is converted into a milestone is because you put a timeline into it. Otherwise, it's just a tag that will be in your to-do list forever, and depending on the importance, will get done or not. You don't want to do that in a project. You want to have clear tasks with priorities and a timeline. And that way you can map what you are working on now and where is it going next. It is also very useful if you like checklists, and you don't like to, or you forget things. Basically, if you have a neurodivergent brain, it's usually quite useful to have one of these, because when you check things up, gives you a great dopamine rush. When you've forgotten why are you here or what are you doing today, it's nice to see like, oh yes, I am in this step. So this is why I love these things, basically, and they keep me in check. So again, the milestones, regarding to the milestones. So they are usually, when we refer to milestone, it's also like not just any task. It's usually significant turning points or event that will move the project forward. So they are usually like, not necessarily big tasks, but tasks that if they don't get done, the project just gets stuck. So you can have like a status goal, so like a feature release, the minimum buyer product, whatever you can think of. It can be an event, so you will have a date with your event. So again, like maybe a hackathon. And of course, you should work with timeframes. So there are milestones that are going to be short-term, medium-term, long-term. So this is actually the part that I will invite you to work on now. Let me see. Yes. I'll repeat before, but basically I would like us today to work a bit on the tasks and timelines of your projects, convert them, and maybe start with milestones. So pick 1 to 2 to 3 maximum milestones for your timeline. So a timeline with more than 3 milestones is usually a nightmare. And will just overcrowd your roadmap. So I would say no more than 3 milestones for your roadmap. And again, no milestone is a milestone without a timeline. Again, within each milestone, there are usually several tasks associated with it. Sometimes a milestone is a task itself if it is simple enough, but more often than usual, they do rely on different tasks to be done. So what information do you need to include in each task to make it easy for contributors? What needs to be done? Simple, 1 sentence. We are doing X. We have done X because we've managed to do Y. So what does success look like? We are going to do X by starting with 1. So pointers to get started. And why is this important? Reinforcing your vision. So again, if you remember, like I'm keep coming back to the first steps. If you have a good vision, it's difficult, but it's not impossible to get a roadmap and the task going on, because it goes one with other. Usually things get much more difficult when you don't have a vision. And last, How do we store this roadmap? So there are very different ways. If you are working on GitHub, you can do it in a separate file. So I'm just going to open, see if this works. It should, yes. So for example, just on an empty document on the GitHub repository, in here you have a roadmap. So again, there's the motivation, a bit of introduction, the work plan. So 3 main pillars, 3 main milestones. How are we going to achieve them? It can go directly in the README file. That's totally fine. On an issue, so this is actually that we did something that we did on OLS. So this was our roadmap, for example, for applications, for our programs. How are we going to, what is our program? How people are going to get involved? What is the timeline? And some milestones here with some tasks associated. So this was our roadmap for this specific part of our program. And then you can just use the projects tab on GitHub. Basically, it's very useful. I think I checked these ones and they, damn. I'm sorry for this. I'll try to link. I thought I had checked them all. Yeah, basically this is something that I do use, for example, in my projects. And you have like a milestone, and you can in the projects tab in GitHub, and you can associate again like tasks, timelines, things like that. So we are going to our from about and we're just going to work again a bit on your roadmaps, because otherwise you have already told me that it won't get done. So now you don't have an escape. As you say, there are like 3 main bits. I'm going to go back to this summary. So there are 3 main bits that goes in a roadmap: the project summary and the welcome, how to get involved, and the timeline that includes the tasks and the milestones. My suggestion would be that you either work on your project summary or your timeline. Again, you can do it however you want. This is just a suggestion because in the next session, if you're planning to attend, in the tools for open collaboration, we will be covering how to get involved, like guidelines for contribution, readmes, all the things that actually impact these bits on the roadmap. If you want to get started today, that's totally fine. But definitely I would pick one thing, because I'm going to give you 10 minutes and that is all. So let's keep it realistic, people.